Wanna welcome to Let We Call It We Baj-Story. I am Zana Monique, and today we're gonna dive into the rich tapestry of the Bajan heritage. From the first people on the island to the many cultures that make us who we are today. Barbados may be a small Caribbean nation, but its history is big with diverse influences. Did you know, for instance, that our island got its name from a fig tree? Well, the Portuguese explorers saw the bearded fig trees with long hanging roots like beards and dubbed the place Los Barbados, meaning the bearded ones. This is just one of the many nuggets that I'm gonna explore with you right here today on Exploring We Barbados Heritage. We are going to touch on African roots, European twists, indigenous traces, global connections. We can see how them all intertwine and come together in our language, in our food, in our music, in our religion, in our folklore, and the many values that we hold dear as Barbadians. So sit down and let's get comfy. Or you can even go and cook. Put me in the background, just listen to me a while we talk about Barbados and what celebrates what truly makes a Bajan. Let me start. Long before them Europeans or even the Africans arrived, Barbados had its own inhabitants, the indigenous Amerindians, specifically the Tainos and the Kalinago, so the Arawaks and the Caribs, who came after. Archaeologists literally found tools such as conch shell adzes, I think that's what you call it, dating as far back as 1630 BC. Evidence that people were here thousands of years ago, way before all this nonsense started. These were the early Bajans who fished, farmed cassava, and would have their own villages. However, by the 1500s roughly, their presence just vanished. Well, as far as we know, they vanished. It is said by a Spanish writer that they were possible slave raids and conflicts that forced the indigenous people to flee, and they were captured. So that by 1541, Barbados was virtually uninhabited. However, there is some doubt in this. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you ain't do it already, like, subscribe, and do all the things that you know that you gotta do in order to learn more about your Bajan history and be able to pass the word along so that we can stand firm upon we ancestors' shoulders. The traces that were left behind by the Amerindians were indigenous handiwork found by English settlers in 1628. A sturdy wooden bridge over a swamp that is now called Bridgetown. Yes, that is how Bridgetown got its name. These European settlers first called the area Indian Bridge, honoring those unknown builders. And that name stuck until the town later became Bridgetown. So even though no indigenous communities supposedly remained by the time the Africans and the Europeans came, their legacy still peeks through in our history, in place names, in crops like cassava and corn, and in reminders that this land's story began long before the colonizers, and we need to celebrate that. So before the island was called Barbados after the bearded fig tree, it had a name rooted in the language of the indigenous peoples that once lived there, Ichirouganaim. And I love that name. I wish we would have that again, because I don't like the fact that we actually bear a name that was given to us by our captors, but it is what it is. This name, which is thought to have been given by the Kalina or the Lokono, which is the Carib or the Arawak tribes, have several debated meanings. Some scholars suggest they may have meant red land with teeth, referencing the jagged coral reef that encircles much of the island's north coast and thing. Others interpret it more symbolically as a sacred or place-based name through oral traditions. Why don't you tell me what you think Ichirouganaim means in the comment section below? What Ichirouganaim represents is not just the word itself, but it represents a time before all of that horrible stuff that happened. Before the plantations and the sugar, when the island had a different rhythm of life. While the name Barbados was imposed by Portuguese and later the British, the name Ichirouganaim whispers of a deeper older identity that still lingers in the roots of this land. I am even getting emotional talking about it. I always get emotional bringing up that name. Imagine if we had grown up calling this island Ichirouganaim. Imagine the stories that we might have held onto. Imagine how we would have been. I mean, totally different. Calling out this name, I think, is one small way of calling out the home of the memory of those who were here first. I think we should do that more. What say you? By the 17th century, Barbados had entered its transatlantic saga. The British established sugar plantations and enslaved Africans were brought over in huge numbers from many regions across Western and Central Africa. As a matter of fact, Barbados was one of the first ports of call in the slave trade Middle Passage, a hub that supplied not just its own plantations, but other colonies with enslaved labor. Thousands upon thousands of Africans were enslaved and taken to Barbados, and their diverse cultures laid the foundation for much of Barbadian heritage. Records show a fascinating breakdown of where our African ancestors came from. The largest groups were from the Baita Biafra, the Igbo, the Ibibo, the Efik peoples, the Gold Coast, primarily the Akan, the Baita Benin, including the Yoruba and the Efe. Others came from across Central Africa, the Congo region, and Senegambia. Imagine the whole gumbo, the cross-section of languages and traditions and skills that these Africans carried with them across the Atlantic Ocean to Barbados, despite the horrors of slavery. Them kept many of them cultures alive upon we Bajan soil. On the plantations, African influences blended and preserved. We see it today in we music, and we rhythms, the food and the beliefs, and even our very identity. One powerful symbol of African resistance is the story of Bussa. And I ain't gonna talk about that all over again. Checking my, like we call it, we Baj-Story pinned as a highlight in my platform, and one can see all of that. If one are visiting Barbados and you know, you can visit the Emancipation statue. It's bronze, by the way. It stands near Bridgetown with broken chains in hand, commemorating the 1834 abolition of slavery and the indomitable spirit of Bajans who survived bondage. Every Emancipation Day, it is that ancestry that we Bajans does honor and the hard-won liberty of our foreparents. Remember that. By the way, before I go on, I got a little surprise kinda tucked in there towards the end of this video about my ancestry, so hang tight for that. Our African foreparents didn't just bring the sweat of the sugar fields, you know, them did bring the heart and the soul that still beat in we Bajan culture. The call and response to the tuck rhythm, you know what I mean? The tuck rhythm and the folk tales of that Nancy the Spider, a clever character from West African folklore. I grew up hearing them. Oh my goodness, they used to scare the daylights out of me. And the way how we season we food, all these have roots reaching back to Mother Africa. Even after slavery, Barbados has remained majority Afro-Bajan, about 90% of the population today. And that heritage is the core who we are. Regardless of what you want to say, that is who we are. We are from the Igbo and the Akan. We herited proverbs and storytelling arts from the Yoruba and Congo, spiritual folk practices and rhythms. Remember the walk up and all of that? That ain't we from all the way back. In Barbados' famous landship traditions, yes, the mock naval dance troupe founded by free slaves, so we need to keep them alive. We see Africans cleverly mirroring the British Navy in attire and drills, but dancing to African drum beats of the tuck band. Clever, nah? And them think we ain't had no sense. Our African roots give Barbados its pulse and its resilience, and we worth. Don't forget that. And I can keep telling one, don't forget them. All right then. Barbados's nickname, Little England, wasn't just for nothing, you know. I'm sure you hear them already. As a British colony from 1627 to 1966, the island is heavy with British and European influence. For better, for worse. On one hand, the English language, the British laws and institution, the Anglican religious traditions, even our love of cricket came from colonial influence. Barbados was Britain's first slave society in the Caribbean and its richest colony in the 1600s, due to the sugar profits, of course. It boasted one of the earliest elective legislatures in the Americas. The Barbados House of Assembly was established in 1639, making our parliament amongst one of the oldest in this hemisphere. Yet, Barbados' European heritage is solely English, you know. Irish, Scottish, and Welsh indentured servants were sent here in the 1600s as laborers. Some of them was prisoners of war or the poor Barbados, yes, that did a word, in Cromwell's time. Their descendants formed a small, poor white community known as the Red Legs because of the sunburnt legs. They added their own threads to the Bajan fabric. Also in the 17th century, the Jewish settlers from Brazil introduced windmill technology. How many of you knew that? And their expertise in sugar refining. If you want to go in the heart of Bridgetown, you can see the, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, the Nidhi Israel Synagogue, built in 1654. And it is one of the oldest in the Americas, a testament to that community. Later on, a few Portuguese from Madeira and Indians from other British colonies came as workers as well. And even more recently, we had migrants from China and the Middle East who have now found a home here. Barbados may have stayed politically British until the independence. However, it culturally became the ever-mixing melting pot. Since gaining independence in November 30th, 1966, Barbados has proudly charted its own course while retaining some British traditions. In 2021, Barbados even removed the Barbados monarch altogether as the head of state and became a republic, a powerful modern step to fully owning we governance. But even as we said farewell to the Queen, we still kept things like parliamentary democracy and the rule of law, which are hallmarks of that British legacy. European influence gave us the framework, but Bajans infused it with we spirit. Remember, I did say that I had something to share. We want it, right? So recently, I wanted to check up on my ancestry heritage, my ethnic roots, because I didn't know that. Long time ago, I did do another thing, but I didn't really know. I just knew basic things, but I did more specific with this one. If one want to know about that journey and how you do them, I could do that in another video. But I just wanted to share with one of my maternal side of my DNA and my ethnic roots. I'm so excited to tell one of this. Oh, wow. East Africa as well. I feel a bit emotional. Yoruba, Isan, Semi-Bantu, Bantu, Akan, Igbo, Cameroon Bantu, Mende, Bamum, Tikar, Mandinka, Mosi, Kassina, and then South Africa. Oh, wait, what? I have that. Ovambo. What the heck? I have also East Africa, Maasai. Wow. 97% of the maternal side of my ancestry spans across West, Central, and East Africa. Like a living map of people who shaped me. And I'm so emotional talking about this. So forgive me if I got tear my eye thing. From the Yoruba and the Igbo nations, I carry the rhythm and the ritual and deep spiritual traditions. From the Isan and the Benin and the Akan, I inherit the royal lineages of artistry, governance, and resistance. The Tikar, Bamum, and the Cameroon Bantu remind me of the forest kingdoms and the languages that still whisper through we Bajan dialect. The Mende and the Mandinka gave the world the griots, the storytellers. Oh, I tell you, I can get emotional. Whose words preserve empires just like I am, aiming to preserve our story right now. People, I only find this out this week, so forgive me. Forgive me. The Mosi, the Kasima, and the Semi-Bantu roots, I see strength in community, craftsmanship, and survival through centuries of colonial disruption. And I'm talking about even before the transatlantic slave trade. even further across, the Ovambo of Southern Africa and the Maasai of East Africa show me that my people weren't just in the West, they were literally all across Africa. This spirit reaches across deserts and grasslands and coastlines, and now across the diaspora, even through me. All right, give me a minute. Literally, when I was saying to you, I wish you the resilience of my ancestors. No, I know exactly what I was talking about. Like, share, do all the things that you know that you gotta do in order to spread the word that we actually knowing what we're talking about when we say we Bajan or we from Ichirouganaim, to be more specific. You have been listening to Let Me Call It We Baj-Story. I'm Zana Monique. Remember, respect and revive, and I can talk to Luna in the next episode.